Have you ever wondered why so many Americans struggle financially? Why so many Americans have to dip into their savings? Why they have to dip into their investment portfolios, their 401ks, their IRAs, right? Why are so many Americans struggling? Why can they not seem to get on the right footing when it comes to building a savings, investing, and getting on the right path towards financial abundance and financial freedom? According to statistics recently, I don't know how long ago it was, but there was a statistic that stated 62% of Americans own stocks, right? You'd figure that 62% of Americans owning stocks would indicate that they have healthy finances, right? That they would have a decent chunk of money, in their portfolios and were doing well, right? Because we look at stockholders as people who have a lot of money or who are rich, right? But actually, according to a statistic I just read, the U.S. Labor Bureau of Statistics, they stated that 1%, the richest 1% right now own 50% of the collective value in the stock market. That doesn't mean necessarily that those 62% of Americans don't have enough money in there. It's just, why do they not have the money that they want? Why do they still struggle, right? So you guys have to remember, investing in stocks doesn't bulletproof you from financial tough times, from payments, from everything that the average person has to deal with, right? Debt, loans, stuff like this, emergencies, health, illness, right? So many different things. I would argue that even if you own stocks, if you don't have the right foundation for your life when it comes to like financial health, then it doesn't matter what percent of stock that you have. Doesn't matter how many index funds you have. Doesn't matter how many tech stocks you have, right? So you have to look at your life or people, right? You have to look at their life circumstances. You have to look at the outline of how they designed their life, right? So a lot of people, I would argue, that struggle financially, number one, don't make a lot of money, don't care to make more money, don't work enough, and number two, set up their life, they don't budget, they overconsume, they have kids they can't afford, right? They go to school, they get a worthless degree, they have to pay back student loans, they get a car, they get an expensive car, they have to pay a heavy car note, right? So a lot of things are the reason why these people are still broke is because of their foundation. Their foundation is rocky. Their foundation, the way they set things up for their financial circumstances are not conducive to building wealth. They have a lot of debts that they have to pay off, or, right, because you can escape debt. There's people that have escaped debt by hard work, by sacrifice, by not spending, right? But a lot of people are screwed because of, I would argue, two of the biggest things that most Americans get caught up in is going to school. Student loans are ridiculous, right? Student loans are absolutely ridiculous. I don't think the average person fully pays off their student loans to like between 35 and 40, right? So we're looking at a populace of people that, yeah, they might have stock, right? But that doesn't mean they're still debt free. That doesn't mean that they had kids they couldn't afford. That doesn't mean that their income is sufficient enough to save, to build, to invest, right? Like, yeah, they might be able to have $100 a month and throw $50 at a index fund or something like that. But guys, you have to look at people, right? Like, do they have a higher income skill? Are they pursuing a career path that has a high earning ceiling, right? Like, I would argue a lot of people don't, right? Like, the average person makes between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. Like 60%, 63% of individual workers in America make between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. So, okay, great, you make between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, right? But that doesn't matter. Like, okay, let's say you made $50,000 a year, right? And you have no kids and you are living below your means. Maybe you're renting, maybe you're in a condo, doesn't matter, right? If you're able to save $2,000 a month. Let's say you're able to save between $1,000 and $2,000 a month. You're able to invest a quarter of that. So you're able to invest 500. Now you can start to build your wealth. But a lot of people aren't able to do that because, okay, you make $50,000 a year, which is fine. That's not even a lot. But if you're an overconsumer, if you aren't actively pursuing more money, if you don't work extra on the weekends, right, or you don't have some sort of side business that you're working on scaling, right, you're by default behind, right? Because again, inflation is not going to stop. Now, you're not going to notice it in a year, but over a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of you not pursuing more money, not working on the weekends, or not trying to scale some form of business that could generate you revenue on the side, then it doesn't matter how much stock you own. It doesn't matter how much you have in the stock market. You can own as much stock as you want, but if you're not actively making more money to put more into that, it doesn't matter. And it also doesn't matter, even if you are actively trying to make more money and you're able to invest and still live below your means, if you have kids you can't afford and you have student loans, you're still going to be held behind. So I would argue that most of those people that are still broke, right, or living, I would consider this broke, because we have to define broke. I would classify broke as into two categories. You live paycheck to paycheck, or you have a bunch of debt. If you live paycheck to paycheck or you have debt, you cannot build wealth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter how much you have in an investment account. You still are behind. You still are trying to catch up financially. So at the end of the day, yes, we can sit here and say, yeah, 62% of Americans own stock, right? Your average person would think, damn, like, okay, like most people are doing all right. But they're not, because I would argue those two things: having kids you can't afford, and school, right? And then obviously, you add a car note, you add the people are just generally over consumers, right? So again, those are some more minor things, but I think those two main ingredients, and then obviously not pursuing more a brighter financial future as far as your earnings go, as far as your career path, as far as a business. Like, there's so many different factors that go into that. It's not just, 62% of Americans own stocks, so by default they must be financially well off or okay, right? So just keep some things in mind, and also just realize that those are probably some of the reasons. I can't sit here and pinpoint exactly why it is, but I've also read a stat between like 30% and 60% of Americans have like less than $1,000 in their bank account, and I'm sure that fluctuates month to month, but the average person, like I said, is so brainwashed. They went through so much conditioning early on in their childhood. They were told that they can live a white picket fence life. They were told that they could get married early, have kids, go to school. And that is, they say that's the American dream. That's the American lie. The American lie nowadays is go to school for 4 years, get a degree, get married, and have kids. That's a losing formula right there. I would say the opposite is true. Don't go to school unless you're getting something that you can obviously pursue a career in. If you're going to live at home, work for a few years, save for a down payment, get a house, right? Increase your earnings, right? Pursue something, whether it's a trade, whether it's a business, whether it's a career in some executive position, right? I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I would say that, and then obviously don't get married and have kids until you are financially stable, until you have a footing, until you are established in some career to where you're making enough to where you can save and live below your means. Do not have children and do not go to school unless, again, that career, that education will yield a higher salary. But even still, it's like, especially if you're not paying for it, or especially, if you're paying for it, let's say you come out of school, right? And I mentioned this a little while ago. You come out of school at 27, 28, right? Because that's typically, you graduate at 23, 24, or let's just say 26, 27, right? So you're 27, you're still broke, you have no money. And okay, let's say at 28, you land a high paying job. You land a $100,000 a year job. Well, okay, great. You make $100,000 a year, but you still got $2,000 a month to pay off in student loans, or $1,000 or whatever your amount is. So that's great, but you still are hindered from that liability that will haunt you down the road, that will push you back 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So again, that stock, this 62% of Americans owning stock has nothing to do with people being financially well off. There's so many different variables that account for why people can't build wealth and can't achieve that financial freedom that we all really want and desire. So anyways, guys, that's it. That's all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them down below. And as always, I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.